Mirror Image by Dustin Falcon. The story is about a woman named Mary Worth. Most of you may know her as Bloody Mary. Some of you may know her as changing her name on the mirror, which we all have done when we were kids. The story first takes place in the late 1800s during a cold, rainy night in London, where a doctor is heading down to this Worth residence home just to check on Mary Worth, see what's going on in the situation in her time of need. While the doctor is heading down to the residence home, he starts remembering all the tales and stories the people in London told him about Mary Worth, how she was an entity, how she was a witch, how she was able to move stuff with her mind. And it also talks about her father, how he was a sick, twisted man, how he was in love with his daughter, and all this. He was kind of like a witch himself. When the doctor finally gets to Mary Worth's home, he starts panicking, freaking out as if the stories are true. But then he starts having more of the courage to finally knock on the door. When the door opens, he sees that his mother, Mary Worth's mother, is covered in blood and all that, but it's not her blood, and he starts to wonder what's going on because he hears a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting, believing it has to be Mary Worth. While he goes inside, he finds a priest in there as well, and just Mary's mother, just those two, while Mary's all covered in her own blood, screaming, shouting that she just lost her own child. Now, I'm not gonna say what else happened during that home and what he finds out and discovers and what happens, but what I can tell you what happens in that part of the prologue of the story is that it's pretty gruesome, it's pretty gory as hell. I mean, it's like, wow. After you finish the prologue, the story continues on to chapter 1 in St. Joseph, Missouri, 2013. These three officers are heading down to this abandoned home where they hear this man screaming known as Aaron. He's freaking out, he's panicking, believing that he's about to die today during that same night. While that's going on, this detective known as Martin Winfield heads down there looking for this guy Aaron. While the detective gets into that home with the three officers, Aaron notices this detective's name. He calls out his name as he knew who he was. And this detective goes into this apartment, this abandoned home. He's trying to calm down Aaron any way he can, but Aaron's just freaking out, like he knows he's just gonna die. After that, the chapter 2 takes place 2 years later in a small town known as Scarlet Creek in Colorado, where the town population is 18,000. People there mind their own business, they keep to themselves. The crime rate there is very, very low, so it's a peaceful, nice, living town. The story starts off with a high school senior known as Christian Northern. He's one of the main characters of the story. He's also one of the nicest characters in the book. Now, Christian Northern is not like everyday high school jock. He's nice to everybody. He always listens. He's always there when people are grieving. He's always minding his business. He's kind of like the forgiving person. Like compared to other horror movies and other books where the jocks are always the assholes and jerks, he's like the opposite, which is kind of nice because you don't see a lot of horror books and even in movies. Another character in the story is his young brother Jason. Jason is one of the biggest troublemakers in the story. He has the highest criminal record than anyone in the town, but since he's still a juvenile, he can't be thrown in prison. So for that, he was recommended to do community service. This community service recommended him to do babysitting, which kind of sounds silly, for a story, but it actually does blend in with the story very well. The kid Jason has to babysit is Dawn Day. She's 12 years old, a Native American nice girl. At first, he didn't like the idea of babysitting for community service, but then he got to know her more. Then from then on, he became not just best friends with her, but starting to love her like a sister. He was always there babysitting her, just even though he was no longer on parole and all that stuff. The story continues on with Christian heading to the bathroom, combing his hair and all that, and then heading to class. He's with his friend Isaac, who's also another character in the story. Him and his friend Isaac are just chit-chatting, talking all their plans for the future, because that day in class is their last day of school. It's on Friday. After that, Christian, Isaac, and one of their friends, who's one of my favorite characters in the story, Corey, all three of them are heading down to the fairgrounds in Denver where they work. Corey, Justin, and Christian all head down to Justin's home, and all their friends as well. They're all partying, blowing the night away as it was their last day in high school, as all of them are seniors, except for a few, Tammy, Shannon, and I can't remember who else was. While they're out there partying, it hits the next day. It's a Saturday. Jason wakes up. He remembers he has to head down to the day residence to go babysit Dawn. He gets there at noon. He's over there. They're playing video games and all this stuff. And then after that, it hits night. He realizes he was there for 10 hours. And then the mother, Rachel, who's the mother of Dawn, asks him if he wanted to spend the night. He said, "Yeah, sure." He spends the night. While that's going on, he realizes that he feels like a cold, chilling sensation, like there's some evil spirit in the house. He starts to freak out. He goes into the bathroom. He fills it in there, and then all of a sudden he sees Dawn just staring at him. She says that she needs the bathroom. He lets her in there, and he's in the living room just minding his business. And then he begins to hear Dawn speaking to somebody, and he starts hearing all these freaky stuff that kind of like freaks him out what she's saying. And then I'm not gonna ruin that part, but yeah, that's something freaky goes in there. After that, it's Sunday. Christian and all his friends are all graduating out of high school. They're all waiting for their one friend known as Lean, who's also named a main character of the story and also one of my favorite characters. She's running late. She forgot to get her cap and gown. She forgot that she had to be there at a certain time, but she gets there in time. She gets her diploma. They all get their diploma. They graduate and they decide to head back to Justin's home to party again. They all get drunk. They all get hammered and all this stuff. And Jason's there with his brother too. They're all there, all the cast. The next day, Jason decides to head down to Dawn's home just to pay a visit. While he gets over there, he notices that she's playing a song from a famous musician we all know as Van Vivithium. I can never say his name, but she's playing one of his famous songs for Alessia, and he's like really shocked to see how a girl this age could play this type of song. Jason asks Dawn's mother, Rachel, who was teaching her how to play the piano, because he was shocked to see a 12-year-old girl play this good. And she was surprised when he asked her. She said to him, "I thought you were teaching Dawn how to play." And Jason says, "No." That came a shock to both of them. And then he goes up to her and he was like just shocked to see how she was playing. And he asks her, "Where'd you learn how to play that?" And she says, "My imaginary friend, Mary Worth." And he starts asking her more questions and questions about her. Before you know it, Dawn runs into her bedroom and she yells out, "I told you too much." And Jason's like, he feels all bad for asking too many questions, and he leaves. The next day, Jason starts remembering what Dawn told him about Mary Worth. So he starts going on the internet, starts looking her up because he remembers sometime in the past how that the name starts coming to his mind. Like he knows who she is, but he just can't puzzle it. While he's searching all over the internet who Mary Worth is, he starts noticing that it relates to this girl known as Bloody Mary. And that's when he starts remembering where the name had to have come from. Because when he was a child, him and his brother used to practice this a lot, but it never came true. While he was done researching, he decides to call Rachel, asking if he could come and visit. And she says, Rachel tells him, "Yeah, sure, you can come down." Dawn's just by herself. He's like, "Okay, good." And so he heads down to the day residence home, pays a visit to Dawn, asking her more questions about her imaginary friend Mary Worth. And Dawn starts telling Jason more about Mary Worth, the past, and all this. And that's when the story of Mary Worth begins to kick in. And then Jason starts to freak out, and all of a sudden he just forgets all about it. But then all of a sudden his friend Dawn, something bad happens to her, and he just freaks out because he loved her like a sister. And then he remembers his brother Christian saying that him and his two friends Corey and Isaac just finished fixing up the place that at the fairgrounds known as the House of Mirrors. And he was saying how there's 13 mirrors over there, and then Jason starts remembering something he read on the internet about Mary Worth, and he decides to put that urban legend to the test. What Jason decides to do is get at least 12 of his friends to go over there and break into the state fairgrounds, which they all did. They all head down to the House of Mirrors, and each person stood right by a mirror, and each person took one at a time. Each person chanted out Bloody Mary, taking turns all in a circle. Every character in this story is in that House of Mirrors, and they're facing at their own mirror, chanting out the name. While all 13 of them chanted the name, they realize it didn't work, and then Jason starts to think, screw it. And then he says, screw it, let's all head down to Justin's party and then just get drunk and all this stuff. The next day, this big, huge storm comes in. It's like the storm they'd never seen before, and all of a sudden this rain's pouring hard, smacking Corey and Jason in the face. They're trying to do everything they can to get back in the house, but they can't, so they take cover behind these trees for an hour, and then finally the storm just fatally disappears like it never happened. After the storm was finally gone, Christian, Jason, Corey, and all their other friends look up in the sky like, what the heck, because the storm just disappeared like it was nothing, like some type of supernatural thing to them. But little did they know that was Mary's way of making her entrance into Scarlet Creek, and that's when the whole story begins. That's when all the horror, all this gruesome, all this gore. That's all I'm gonna say about the story. I just ruined some of it. I'm not gonna ruin the rest of it. I really enjoyed this book. I really did. This is by far my most favorite horror book I've ever read. This book, the third time I read it, it took me about 9 days to knock it off. But if you're a fast reader, you could probably get it done in 4 or 5 days. Me, I'm a slow reader, so it took me a long time to get this done. Despite that the book is based on a character entity which is looked upon by little kids, and despite that the book is based on teenagers, I highly not recommend this book for young kids or young teenagers. This is a book I would recommend more for older adults or teenagers at the age of 18, maybe 16, maybe. This book has description of high, tense, gruesome, lots of blood, brutally massacring. This book is very intense. Strong language, teenage sex, sexual content, use of drug, alcohol. Alcohol. This book has everything you can imagine in a horror movie, in a horror story. I really, this book is by far the most messed up, disturbing book I've ever read. Believe me, I've read a lot of horror books, a lot of gruesome, torturing, massacring books you can think of. Crime. This by far is the knocks them all out. This is very, very disturbing. I really love this book. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna read this again while I upload this video. This book, however, is hard to find because it's still new. It's the best place you can get it definitely is on Amazon. You go anywhere else, you won't be able to find it in these stores. This book was $20 when I got it. It's not. This book is Dustin Falcon's very first, and I thought that was kind of silly for selling for $20. But I guarantee you, after you're done reading this book, you'll be amazed how amazing this is. $20 will be like nothing to you. This is the best $20 I ever spent on a book. This is my very favorite horror books out there. I'll give you the link to the descriptions below where you can order this online on Amazon because this was hard to find the first time it came out. But since it's been out for a year now, you can probably find this easily. I'll also put down descriptions on the links below. If you read this book, comment down. Let me know what you think. Also, another thing about this book is it has a lot of teenage humor in it. So while you're reading the parts where the characters are getting massacred and all this stuff, one of the characters will make a sarcastic remark, and you'll just laugh. I mean, I was laughing my ass off throughout the whole entire book. I just couldn't take it serious. I was taking more of the jokes serious than I was on the poor characters. So yeah, I like this book. I'm gonna yeah, please check out this book. And also another thing is Dustin Falcon, he's coming out with another book sometime in the future. I don't know what it's called. I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know how long he's been working on it, but what I can tell you is that once it comes out, I'm definitely gonna buy it. I don't care how much it is, regardless of what it's about, or if it's a continuation of this. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna buy it. I'm a satisfied customer with the story here, and I'm looking forward to what he has to write in the future.